Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Happy New Year. Another edition of Cross Functionality, episode 23. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast side, the audio side, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, or of course on the YouTube side, Softball Strength Academy. Today, episode 23, talking about the 4 pillars of the swing. Very excited to do this. So, this show, of course, as always, we say connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female. And you know what? No better day to do it than today because we are talking about hitting and how it connects between both, again, baseball and softball. So let me bring in softball national champion at the University of Alabama, current day renowned coach, friend, co-host Cassie Reilly-Boccia. Cassie, what's going on? Respect the game, baby.
All is good. All is good. Yeah, I got my baseballism sweatshirt on. Respect the game today. So
Yeah, I do have to get some new baseballism clothes and just new, like more baseball wardrobe, if you will.
yeah, this was a Christmas present a couple of years ago. So it's a good one. I like this one. But
What
I
is
think one of my
Cassie Claus,
favorites
by the
is
way? What is Cassie Claus going to be delivering out, or already delivered out?
right.
Christmas on Christmas.
Well, this is second Christmas involving 2 toddlers. So we have a 5 or 6 and a 3-year-old that
Mhm.
get to experience Christmas. So it's a lot different experiencing that than just as an adult alone.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it today. Episode 23 of Cross Functionality, as we discuss the 4 pillars of hitting. I have my 4 pillars. I'll just rattle them off really quickly here, and then we'll go down the list. Timing and vision. And again, these just want for more context purposes. I want to make sure that everybody knows that these 4 pillars, in my opinion, are the absolutes to become a great hitter. Because Cass, and let me just get your opinion on this for a second. There's so much out there now on social media with hitting, and there are things that people say you need to do, absolutes that you need to have in your swing, when quite frankly that's not true. So these absolutes today are going to be a little bit different from the actual fundamentals, because I see things on social media and I see when people put out certain elements of their student swings that those students need to have to be successful. I don't necessarily agree, because I think a lot of that they're cues rather than absolutes. And today we're not talking about that. We're talking about absolutes.
Yeah, so I mean, I obviously I'm privy to your list and I have it, and it's funny because anything it's so hard to try to put things in boxes, but we're trying not to do it in a box. And the same thing that I try to do with my pyramid is try to put an organizational hierarchy to certain things, or to try to say, hey, there's so many things that you could deem important, but one, what's real versus feel, right? It's not just what you're feeling, what's actually going on. And what there's probably 10 or 15 different things that fall underneath one category. If you want to really say, hey, well, mechanics is supreme in this situation, it's like, well, is your mechanics important so you can adjust, or is your mechanics important just to have mechanics? And I think that's always a big debate sometimes, but I'm excited for you to unveil your 4.
Well, you're privy to them, so you
Yes,
kind of already
I
know.
had a
So you're
cheat.
not gonna be surprised. You have a cheat sheet. All right, number one, and this is important. This is not talked about enough, by the way. Timing and vision. Okay, the vision part.
Mm,
You know that story. You being a Yankee fan, you probably didn't like David Ortiz all that much, but he started to, when he was struggling, his eyesight was kind of going a little bit, right? I don't know the exact story, but then he went to the eye doctor and he got his eyes checked. Timing and vision. If you don't have timing, well, vision, okay, obviously, but if you don't have the timing, you're not going to be able to hit anything, right?
yeah, I think there's situations where in cases your vision will affect your timing, and then there's other situations where your vision can be fine and your timing can still be off.
Mhm.
And I've dealt with that firsthand vision wise. I remember I went in the biggest slump of my life my junior year in college. I had a girl come up to me. She was a freshman. She's like, you should probably get your eyes checked. And I was like I was in such a bad place. But sure enough, I started to notice like just little things when my eyes were fatigued during night games. And it doesn't have to be, it's not like, oh, my vision's there and then everything is blurry. It's just enough. It is just enough to all of a sudden you can't see the ball as crisp, as clear. And sure enough, when I went to the doctor, they're like, yeah, if you were just an average person walking down the street, you might not have noticed this slight shift, but because you're so reliant on your vision. So got contacts, and I couldn't believe, I was like, oh, I forgot I used to see the ball that well. I
Yeah.
thought it was another issue. So I've felt with that, or dealt with that firsthand. And you could have the prettiest swing on the planet, but if you can't time up a pitch, it doesn't matter. You have the prettiest swing on the planet. If you're blind, it's not going to matter. So I'm glad that is paramount and key, because if anything, like, gosh, that makes up for so much else. You talk to anybody who's played the game and they're like, yeah, I'd rather have a better, like, a day where I'm just timing the ball up perfectly instead of a day that my swing feels good.
Yeah, and you can get away with bad mechanics or struggling mechanically. Maybe something is off if you have the right timing, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing is too, people try to put, mechanics as king because it's very easy to, like, critique it. It's very easy to just look, but how do you critique someone's timing? How do you critique someone's
Right.
vision? And the other piece of it too. So, a couple interesting things off of vision. I think they've talked about I'm not sure what the greatest the human eye has ever been able to see, but it's not just 20/20 that you're looking for. You're looking for, like, 20/15, which means where normal people see 20 feet away, you're able to see it as if it was 15 feet away. You're able to just
Yeah.
see longer distances better. And so I think Bryce Harper has extreme vision. I think I've heard a lot of stories about that. But then, the other end of it too is just like, how do you take care of your eyes? There's so many techniques to, hey, when you lock into a pitcher, don't stare, because staring is fatiguing. It's almost like you're just holding your arm out for this long. Your arm's eventually going to fatigue. So, like, eye scanning or eye breathing, as Ted Williams used to call it all those years ago, where you're trying to just relax your eyes. And then the first time you pick the ball up, that's the most high definition version of that ball that you're going to see.
It's a great point, because when they're in the box for too long and they're looking out at a pitcher, and pitchers now, of course, at the major league level, they've got the pitch com, but they're still going through the series of signs. And I was always taught 3 seconds and then you step out, because, to your point, your eyes become fatigued, right?
Yeah, gosh. Listen, when I was in college, I was so tuned into, or I wouldn't say tuned in. I was such a believer that the eyes were so important to my ability to hit, my ability to just see an incoming pitch, read it sooner, know if it was a ball, know if it was a strike, that if I had a test on a Friday, but I also had a game on a Friday, I wouldn't stay up studying Thursday night. I'd make sure my studying was done Tuesday or Wednesday so that I could sleep and not be straining on a computer or a book the night before. Just little things like that. And then the other piece of it too is, how much better do you see the ball the more times you see the pitcher? So is there this subconscious vision, if you will, where it's, hey, you've seen a pitcher enough times that it's not your conscious vision. It's not like you saying, like, wow, I'm actually seeing the arm slot go to here, but something in your subconscious triggers, that's a changeup, that's a curveball, and preps you for that pitch before it even comes in. So that's like a whole nother, that's like a third eye to the game, right? They talk about running backs having it when they're trying to find holes. How'd you know to go right instead of left? It's like, well, I don't know. I didn't consciously tell myself to go right. It was just this reaction. Or it's really this anticipation. Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blank, talks about that a lot, which is very cool. And then the sports gene, I think I'm going to blank on his first name, but Epstein is the author. And he talked about that right away. They took Ryan Howard from the Phillies and they started looking at pitchers, and they were like, hey, at what point do you know in this pitcher's windup where that pitch is going to be before they release it? And it just, that was the impressiveness of hitters, is being able to have that third eye look into their the pitchers.
Okay, I'm looking up the book, and for the record, for those crossover listeners who listen to the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast, it is not Mike or Jake Epstein, although they have written 2 separate books. I can't find it.
The sports gene.
Oh, it's called Sports Gene. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I searched the wrong title. Okay,
I'm almost positive Epstein. This
is
like
David Epstein.
David
Epstein. Yes. Cool. It's Sports Gene. I'll give him a quick plug here, I guess. And you know what? I'm going to write this down for later, because I want to order this book and I want to read it. Inside the Science of Extraordinary Athletic Performance is the book by David Epstein.
So like the first chapter was really, or the first part of the book got me hooked, because,
yeah.
Actually, I think that was my first audiobook. So it was a good listen too.
Oh, okay. So you're an audiobook kind of gal. Me too. Well,
I am.
Me too.
I drive 2 hours every day. So
audiobook kind of guy, but you're an audiobook kind of gal. Very good. It's funny because YouTube, I have a whole section in my saved videos for, peeling back the onions today on the new year, first episode of 2023. I have an audiobook section of YouTube where I can just put audiobooks in there that are on YouTube, legally or illegally. It's interesting with timing though. We talk so much about mechanics and the sport of baseball and softball, and it's so heavily talked about at nauseum. But the reason we need to have good mechanics is so that we can actually have good timing, right? I mean,
Mm.
that's why we want to have good mechanics. We can talk all we want about, hey, we need to have good mechanics to barrel up the baseball, but we also need to have adjustable mechanics that if we are fooled on a breaking pitch, baseball or softball, we need to have those solid mechanics that can still get us to the point where we can barrel up the baseball and hit it hard, or softball.
Yeah, if you think hitting off a tee is like the easiest piece of it, right? Like, hey, we're gonna hit off a tee. This is
Right.
the easiest level of entry to hitting. Everything that we do after that is trying to create safety nets for the level of difficulty of hitting, right? So, like, why we teach anything in mechanics is going to be a safety net for trying to react to better pitching, trying to hit the ball a little bit harder, trying to, well, listen, if we're gonna face this type of pitcher, we need the safety net of a really strong front side. If we're going to face this type of pitcher, we're going to need the safety net of a really quick bat. You know, it's that is why you do it, because every single thing a pitcher is doing is they're trying to screw up your timing. And if you have the ability to adjust with your timing, right? It's not just you being able to time up the same pitch over and over again. If you have the ability to adjust, that's going to be king.
Yeah. Also, you made a great point that I want to just circle back to really quick. People watching football games, big time now for college football, the NFL, bowl games, etc. When they zero in the camera shot, they zero in on the running back's eyes and they see him in the backfield and you see him hands on his knees and his eyes are darting around. That goes
Mhm.
back to your point of what you said a couple of minutes ago about the eyes and about the vision.
Yeah, it's something, it's that gamer, right? Like
It's
someone who
cool.
just shows
Yeah.
up in a game and just knows
Yeah.
exactly what to do. It's super cool.
Yeah. Be sure to follow us, by the way, social media at Jim Tara, at Coach_CassieRB on Instagram, at Coach CassieRB on Twitter. And email us your questions, jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. Swing plane, bat path. That's number 2 here as we talk today, episode 23 of the 4 pillar of cross functionality, the 4 pillars of hitting, first episode of 2023, swing plane and bat path. What are your thoughts on that? That's my number 2. That's Jim's number 2 pillar of a successful swing of a successful hitter.
So I kept having to not mention it when we were talking about timing, because I've always teach my hitters the reason why we care about swing plane is because your timing isn't going to be, your anticipation of where you thought that pitch was going to be is
Mhm.
going to be off. There's going to be times you're going to be a little bit late. There's going to be times you're going to be a little early. But when we create that, when we get on plane early, when we can stay on plane as long as we need to, now we're all of a sudden creating this opportunity to have a much larger point of entry for our bat to make contact with that ball. And not just the bat, but the sweet spot part of the bat to make contact with the ball.
Yeah.
And I taught a class coaching softball in my grad degree, or coaching softball and baseball. And it was for individuals who are aspiring to be high school gym teachers. And it was essentially trying to equip them with a playbook to be able to go, if they needed to hire a baseball coach or softball coach, they could apply. And this guy said, he goes, why do we care about extension? Why do we care about any of this when all that really matters is hitting the ball, the point of contact? Why do you care about anything else? And it's a fair question if you've never played the game. If you've played
Yeah.
the game, you understand, like, the ability to just time that up is not, you need that safety net again that I just talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, with swing plane, bat path, let's not forget too, that goes along with adjustability in the swing. Having a good hand path and a good swing plane. I mean, in your opinion, what is a good swing plane? I mean, there's people out there who say, well, it's this or it's this, or to me, it's being on plane with the pitch. What I've learned from the great Jake Epstein, and of course, Cassie, I think you believe in this as well. It's having an adjustable swing, a flatter swing if the pitch is higher, and having a steeper swing plane if the pitch is lower. But it's about getting on plane with the pitch and being as adjustable as possible.
100%. And you know what's so funny? I've been saying for years, I was like, at what point is a hitter's arsenal of bats going to all of a sudden look like a golf bag? I get it. Like, I had a bat that I felt really comfortable with and I wanted that to be my bat, but
Yeah.
maybe we're going to face a high rise ball pitcher and I need a bat that is going to help me stay on that flatter bat plane. That is maybe a little bit more handle or knob loaded so that I'm not dropping the barrel as much. And then when I face a slower drop ball pitcher or someone where I need to get my swing plane a little steeper, I'm going to go use my end loaded bat. You know what I mean? Like, when are we going to maybe start to push to those adjustments as hitters? And again, I don't want to overcomplicate the game. I love the idea of, like, sure, you need to get up there, have like confidence and vision. that works to an extent. At some point, it's going to turn into chess, and I'm waiting for hitters to catch up to the chess game that pitchers have been playing for a while.
And that goes back to swing plane, bat path, and again, having an approach, having a plan as well. I always say that if a hitter on a higher pitch, okay, I'm just going to talk, I guess I'll just talk in baseball terms. When people get this confused a lot with a pitch that is looking like it's rising to the plate,
Mm,
right? You hear that, oh, this pitch had that late life and that rise to it. It was on plane with the pitcher's arm slot. That's all it is. It's not a
yep.
pitch that's really rising. It's on plane with the pitcher's arm slot and on plane with the pitcher on the mound. Now, I've always said that if a hitter fouls that pitch back, to me, it means that they're just cutting under the
hmm
baseball a little bit and that their swing plane is a little bit off. Is that right? Correct?
I mean, yeah, we've said it's so funny. My dad asked me that one time. He goes, he goes, everyone always says when they foul it straight back, they're just on it. He goes, but that's the smallest piece of the ball that you could have hit.
Yeah.
And I've always said, I'm like, it meant like the timing was there, everything was there. Whereas if you foul it off in other directions, it's usually that your timing is off or you're, and I think this too, hand path versus barrel path is very different because you
Well, how
want your,
so?
okay. So when I think of bat path, right, we don't want to
Mhm.
just have our bat come on a straight angle down and sweep across, right? There's
Yeah.
certain, again, creating a safety net. I want my hand path to stay tight to my body. I want to create bat lag. I want to make sure that my tension in my hand is not so strong that I'm vacating that wrist position too soon and then kind of coming around the barrel. The
Mhm.
the way or having the barrel come around the hands. The
Sure.
way the bat makes contact with the ball is important. And that's again why you train mechanics, why you have this very natural-esque swing to it. But it's also why the bat is designed the way it is. The bat is not a plank of wood. There's a smaller handle, a heavier uh, barrel. You know what I mean? So the point of entry does become important. But I would agree with you. That means you're right on path. And it's funny because people have been talking about swing plane for a while. They just didn't realize it. When you foul 3 pitches off, high outside pitches off to the, I'm a lefty, so I would foul it off to the left side.
Sure.
My coach would look at me and be like, hit a ground ball to the shortstop. He didn't want me to actually do that,
Yeah.
but he knew that little adjustment would end up being the line drive in the gap
Yeah.
or the home run over the opposite field wall, right? So we've been talking about it. We just have not put a tangible number to it for a while in baseball and softball.
Yeah, it's a cue, right? That was a cue
Correct.
for you, and that's why I didn't include on this list. I didn't include any real mechanics
Mhm.
because somebody may say, "Hey, chop straight down to the baseball, right? Or chop straight down to the softball." They don't actually
Mhm.
mean do that, but it's a mental cue that then communicates to you physically. I'm sound like real scientific coach here today. And and there you go. That's how the magic happens,
It's
right? But
100%. And you know what? If people get eaten alive on social media
yeah,
because they're talking to an athlete and they're like, that's not what is actually happening in the swing. A
yeah,
cue is an interpersonal relationship between the athlete and the coach. That's it. That coach is trying to get to know that athlete and trying to figure out what is going to work best for them. And if they need to think top half of the ball or completely swinging and missing over the ball in order to get the appropriate outcome, that's what's going to work for them. That doesn't mean they're needing to explain the exact biomechanics of the swing because that's not what's going to work for every athlete.
yeah. Great point. Well said. Number 3 on our list here, the 4 pillars of hitting. By the way, again, Cassie mentioned her hitting pyramid. We're going to discuss that in long form, a topic here in 2023. But number 3, the pitcher trying to get you out. So, in other words, making adjustments, right? Having to make adjustments, having a plan, understanding what that pitcher is trying to do to you. Because that pitcher, I don't care if you're as hot as Bryce Harper, as he was, hot as he was in the postseason. I don't care what hitter you are, how hot you are at that time. You're going to get out. You're not going to go 10 for 10, 20 for 20. It's just not going to happen. That pitcher is going to get you out, and he's going to throw a really good pitch. The higher levels you go, they're going to throw you really good pitches, and they're going to be able to get you out, baseball or softball. Now it's your job to be able to make adjustments and figure out a plan of attack of how to get to that pitcher and stay hot. And that's my third pillar. It's being able to make adjustments because knowing, of course, that the pitcher is going to get you out.
Sure. I think when I hear adjustments, I think of two separate categories. One is in-flight adjustments, which we've been talking about. Those are safety nets, right?
Yeah.
Pitches coming in, you're not getting fooled on a changeup, whatever that might be. That's a pitch is released. It's an in-flight adjustment. You work all off season to have those in-flight adjustments.
Mhm.
The other adjustments that we're talking about are pitch to pitch, at bat to at bat, potentially game to game. And if you watch college softball, college baseball, the pros, whatever it is, you have some hitters who struggle for an entire season, and it takes them, it's not that they're not trying, but it takes them, almost an entire season to make those types of adjustments, or it's a slew of games that they're struggling with those adjustments. I think when you see hitters who are fairly consistent, it's not that they're not failing, it's that they have this issue, or they get out, but then they don't get out 3 times in a row. They don't get out 4 times in a row. Mike Trout is making the adjustment in his 3rd and 4th at bat, where some people maybe are getting fooled and going 0 for 4, right? So I think that game IQ, the ability to sit with a coach or self-analyze what's going on and what the pitcher's trying to do and how you're going to do that is huge.
Yeah, hey, look, video's great, and I think that's the first thing you should go to and evaluate yourself. What are you doing mechanically? Is everything in line with where it needs to be? Okay, good. Next, we check our timing. Okay, check. The third thing is then, okay, let's really bear down here and figure out a really good approach and the adjustments that we have to make to get out of this slump, because everything else checks out okay, right? We look at the video. Okay, mechanics are fine, whatever. We'll work on some little thing that we need to work on. How's the timing? Okay, now we spend a bulk of our time being able to make adjustments and coming up with a plan of how to get to that pitcher and to hit that pitcher who has been dominating us and has our number as the hitter.
Sure. And you know what? I get asked all the time, hitters just seem really lost on a plan. And they have this feeling of like, well, I've experienced this moment where my mind is blank. I'm just going up there trusting myself, and it's worked. And that's fine, but we have to also accept that not every moment is going to be like that. And there's also going to be moments where you're going to need more than that. And it's similar for studying for a test. You don't want to be cramming for the test 5 minutes before you walk through the door, and then all of a sudden be trying to think of what you just wrote in your notes as you're taking the test. You want to know it, and then you're just like, oh, boom, that's the answer. So when you get into the box, we shouldn't be thinking about our plan. We should know it. If we have somebody who is crushing us on the outside part of the plate, where it's like, as a lefty, I'm standing on top of the plate, I'm trying to drive the ball into the opposite field gap, and I'm just before I have 2 strikes, I'm letting everything else go, and I'm zoning in on this side. And maybe someone coming inside, we back off a little bit. Those are just minor things that can make such a huge difference for someone who's good. You're tipping your hat to the pitcher and saying, you're good, and you require more than me just saying, all right, I'm just going to trust my swing. There's a lot more that goes into that.
So, broad question for you. How do you make in-game adjustments? Just depending on what the results are, good or bad. How do you go about, as a coach, how do you teach your players to make those in-game adjustments?
You know what? I don't know if I actually knew what I was doing, how I was doing it. I think it was mainly timing adjustments that I would make. Okay, well, she's throwing a little slower. I'll wait a little longer. She's coming in faster. I got to be quicker. Just little things like that. But then when I got to college, my coach really made us practice like, hey, 1 round of BP, you're practicing being on the plate, off the plate, up in the box, back in the box, little tweaks. Cause you're not going to make massive mechanical adjustments. Even, what the way you would make a mechanical adjustment is, like I said, hey, hit a ground ball to shortstop. Instead of saying your swing plane's too steep, we need to adjust your swing plane. Right.
Yeah. You get all complicated in game. It doesn't
something external versus internal. Right. So those are fairly simple adjustments. I think, too, it's trusting your coach. You come back in the dugout. The coach is like, listen, you look super anxious up there, like you're really aggressive on your front side. And then now you're in the on deck circle. And as you're practicing your timing, you're practicing, land, like your stride being a little smoother, landing on a softer front side, if you will, not as harshly into your front foot. So those are just small things. But again, you want to take care of it before you're in the box. When you're in the box, I know my plan. I know what spot I'm looking for. My timing's already been done in the on deck circle, and now it's me versus you.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned your coach in there, your college coach, Patrick Murphy. He was a guest co-host, of course, on this very lovely program, Cross Functionality. So please subscribe to the podcast. Go back to listen to previous episodes, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Watch the show too. Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. Content always going up on the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. Number 4, our final hitting pillar of the day, episode 23. And this is a biggie, a real biggie. The word begins with a C. Confidence.
Nice.
Have to be confident at the plate.
Yeah,
easier said than done sometimes.
You know what? I maybe it's not, maybe females are just more willing to say that they're not confident, but I predominantly work with females, and it's amazing how females will have all this talent but not be confident in it. And then I'll work with guys and they have very little talent, but they think they're very, very good. And it's just, I'm putting a blanket over high school male and females right now. But, I say to people, I'm like, what do we need to work on today? And they'll be like, well, I'm dropping my hands, pulling my shoulder. I feel really late on the ball. Cool. And then we talk about it a little bit. And I say, would you rather have a flawless swing with 0 mechanical errors, perfect timing, but you lack confidence in that swing? Or would you rather have a swing that has some holes, has some timing issues, but you are so supremely confident in that swing? And they're like, oh, yeah, the second one. And the moral of the story is you're never going to have a perfect swing. You're never going to have perfect timing. There's always going to be some type of issue. Yeah. But how much our confidence actually plays in us trusting ourselves and letting the best version of ourselves actually perform on the field.
I guess a lesson in there, you said it perfectly. People have to remember this, kids. Your swing will never be perfect. You're never going to have the perfect swing. And if you do, you're going to hit a home run. Okay. But sometimes even if you don't have the perfect swing and you hit it off the end of the bat and the barrel goes flying like Bryce Harper did years ago, and you still hit a home run, it's not the perfect swing. So in other words, you're not going to have the perfect swing every single time. You can strive for that, just like you're not going to get a hit every single time. So it's good to put things as a hitter, put things into perspective.
That's a great point. Yeah. And it's, I think it sometimes gets lost because I think parents or athletes have this illusion that, hey, if we just perfect the swing, like they'll be more consistent. They'll have a higher batting average. There's way too many things that go into hitting. And it's easy to check the box of, well, I worked on my mechanics today. You're working on a small fraction of what actually goes into you being a great hitter. And the hard questions, the difficult things to work on is how are you feeling at the plate? How are you feeling walking up to the plate? What's your performance anxiety like? What's your doubt like when you're at the plate? Because typically high anxiety, high doubt are going to inhibit that ability to have your confidence come to play. And your ability to have great timing and vision, your ability to get on plane, your ability to make adjustments are all going to be inhibited by this confidence. And if anything, you're probably going to have, I've said this before, your physical game is going to be basically just controlled by this mental performance ceiling. So until we break through that mental performance ceiling, that anxiety management, that failure recovery, so that our confidence can remain high, our physical performance will just remain where it's at.
All right. Well, great stuff this week. I hope everybody got something out of today's show. Episode 23 of Cross Functionality. Next week, episode 24, we're doing something called Teachable Moments, where we're going to discuss coaches and helping their players with teachable moments, when to actually identify those teachable moments in game, in practice, things like that. So we're going to discuss that episode 24 next week. What do you have coming up in the new year, Softball Strength Academy in 2023?
Sure. Yeah. This is the busiest time of year for our building. We have every pro athlete, every college athlete home, and then obviously baseball, softball. The only season you're not playing is winter. So everyone's training. And so we have a lot of teams in the building. We're busy every night, every day of the week, and it's a fun time. So a lot of in-house stuff. But if you can't get to us in-house, we have our drill library online. We have our mental performance course online. So definitely check those out. And as always, reach out to Jim or myself for questions on this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Line of the show, by the way, was just a couple of minutes ago. I see males with less talent. Or what was the line? Sorry, I don't want to get the line
it's okay.
wrong.
I have females with a lot of talent with very little confidence, and I have males with very little talent with a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And you guys can guess who that may be. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening, watching, everybody. Subscribe to the show, and we will talk to you all next week.